Some of the pros, obviously, you have three potential ball carriers at any given time. In my system, we have all eligibles have an opportunity to get the football. Just depends on what formation, motion shift, anything that we get into. So it's a little bit more diverse. Um, it's an offense or a play that is hard to stop with good execution, um, and almost impossible to defend with great execution. And I happen to believe that we run it pretty well here. Our kids, after a year or two now, have a really good understanding of the offense. So um, basically, having great execution comes from preparation and repetition. This is one of the things that I always come back to is preparation and repetition. Those are the two most controllable factors that a coach can have. And the biggest thing about this play is when you commit to it, you need to rep it. You need to rep it. It's a lot of repetition, not only from the ball handling point of view, from the reads from the quarterback, the execution from the offensive line. That's the biggest part right there, where they can get used to the line calls and getting the thing blocked up correctly. Speaking of the offensive line, you don't need a dominant offensive line. Athletic ones make it better. So if you're in a situation in high school where you can't recruit, maybe you can't recruit the offensive lineman that you want. You get a couple of those basketball players from the basketball team, the 6'2", 6'3" guys, maybe 245, somewhere around there. Obviously, if they're a little bit more athletic, it makes the play better. Everyone wants to have those 6'6", 320-pound guys that just came off the bus from Ohio State and have those guys playing for you. Even here at Ferrum, we're not fortunate to have some of those guys, but athletic and smart and nasty. Those are what you look at for the offensive line. Uh, the option forces defenses to play assignment football. They need to stay disciplined. They need to account for each and every ball carrier, each and every motion and counter. The option can predict secondary coverage and defensive alignment. And this is a key thing for the quarterback, not only in the running game but in the passing game. And it's really an offshoot of the gun triple. The option can control the blitz by exposing the blitz. A mistimed, ill-conceived blitz can mean a big play for the option. That's why you don't necessarily see a lot of blitzing versus option teams. And then, of course, the shotgun gives the offense the advantage in the passing game, not only for the quarterback being far enough away from the line of scrimmage, doesn't need about withdrawal steps, doesn't need to worry about the ball handling and getting away from center, getting that depth. He's already back behind the line of scrimmage. It also takes the pressure off the offensive line. So if we don't have a dominant offensive line as far as the running game, maybe you don't have a dominant offensive line as far as the passing game. So putting the quarterback back away from center and putting everything on the clock as far as the passing game, the time that we want things thrown and completed. So that's what we say about putting it on the clock. Put it on the clock and get the ball out on time to our receivers. That takes the pressure off the offensive line. Cons, this is what you're going to hear about the option. I've heard this basically all my life. It's shunned because too many people don't know enough about it. We fear what we don't understand. So this is a situation where we can get a number of people to understand what we're doing. It's not too dissimilar from being under center. A lot of the concepts, as I was saying before, a lot of the concepts are similar. And we were fortunate to have option guys, option kids that were running an option system to move right into. So I think that things kind of went hand in hand. People say it's a high risk because of the amount of ball handling. There are no stats to back this up. So I've taken a look at the option teams and regular teams as far as turnovers are concerned. Ball security and exchanges are practiced and coached every single day. Every single day we run the option. We run the option in practice, and we have a set amount of time that we devote to it. And I would encourage, if you're a high school guy, I know that you may have an offensive emphasis day and a defensive emphasis day. I would say that you always need to have an option period during practice, even if it is a defensive emphasis day, just because you need those reps. Bad weather ruins the option because it increases the risk of fumbles. There's no concrete data to support this claim. Uh, we practice weather situations all the time. One out of every 10 days, we'll do a wet ball drill. And we do that not with our leather footballs, but we'll do it with rubber footballs. We'll dunk them in water, and we'll have to run the option executing it with wet rubber balls, which is very difficult to do. But over time, the kids start to get it. It's a lot, it places a lot more emphasis on ball security. Um, so it's coached. The value of the football is coached just like it would be in any other offense. Obviously, turnovers, that's always going to play a big role in determining the outcome of games. So you need a great, fast, athletic quarterback. That's some of the things that I hear. We're fortunate to have a very fast, athletic quarterback here at Ferrum. But when first year at the University of Charleston with Tony, we had a quarterback about 6'2", maybe 225, and he was a throwing quarterback from West Virginia, and he came in. He raced a pregnant lady and came in third. So he wasn't very athletic. He was more of a thrower. But one thing he was a leader. He was very intelligent, and he was serviceable as an option quarterback. So your quarterback really needs to have a high football IQ and probably be the best competitor on the team. He definitely does need to be a leader, and I like to say that he's the point guard of our offense. He needs to distribute the ball to our ball carriers and our wide receivers, get us in the right plays, and manage the game. And when the plays come to him, he needs to take advantage of that. Another con: option offenses only run the football, and that's boring. So I've heard that too. And one of the things about the gun triple, what we want to be is we want to be good at the option, and we want to be good in the passing game. As opposed to maybe a team that wants to be a spread option team and run the ball 90% of the time or 95% of the time, throw it 4 or 5 times a game. We want to have the ability that if we are backed up or we have to come from behind, that we're built to do that with our passing game and also with our running game. So we're looking for balance. And this past season, I believe we had over 400 yards of total offense in addition to 32 points a game. And we had close to 200 in our conference stats, close to 220 yards rushing, 190 yards passing. And we actually broke the single season passing record here at Ferrum for yards, touchdowns, completions. Our quarterback had a 60% completion percentage. And as I was saying before, one of the good things about the gun triple, it allows us to get the quarterback away from the line of scrimmage. Again, we set a record close to 200 passing attempts this year. We only gave up 5 sacks. And I think that's a testament not only to the system, but also to some of the kids that are playing in it. So, that's certainly something that we're looking for. And if you're looking at cons, maybe you have to have older guys playing it, younger guys playing it. This year, our quarterback was a sophomore quarterback. His first year in the system, first year playing in the system. He had taken over for a quarterback that was a senior conference player of the year the previous year, and all our guy did was break all the passing records and also broke the rushing record for touchdowns here at Ferrum. Broke Chris Warren's touchdown record here, and he was named Player of the Year of the conference as a true sophomore. So fortunate to have him, and I think it's just kind of an offshoot of the system itself too, or at least I like to think that. So some of the things that I want to go over now, just want to go over the fundamentals of the gun triple. Let's talk about stance all the way from just about every 11 here. We'll focus on the offensive line. They're going to be in an attack 2-point stance, and the best way to describe this is basically as a clamshell. Feet are going to be shoulder width apart, maybe a little bit wider for taller guys. A slight stagger, toe to instep. Again, taller guys might have more of a stagger. We're going to rest our forearms on the thigh boards, pinch our knees in nice and tight, and get into a what we call pads on pads, shoulder pads on thigh pads. We're going to raise the butt up, bowl the neck back, and we're scanning the defense. We'll have about 60% forward, 40% back. Again, we got to pinch those knees in so we can gain leverage on our first step. So those are some basics for the offensive line right there. And then the slot backs. Slot backs are going to have a staggered stance, toe to instep. They'll be taller than the offensive line. They'll have their hands on top of their thigh boards. Inside foot will be slightly back, and outside foot slightly up. They'll be balanced so they can take off, go vertical, go back into pitch path, go lateral into some motion, so that they want to make sure that their toes are underneath their armpits. So nice and balanced with that. The tailback's going to be in a more narrow 2-point stance, and we call the tailback in our offense. We call him a tailback instead of a fullback. Basically, what that does is that takes the normal fullback who runs a 4.9 40 and makes him faster just by calling him the tailback. So all of a sudden he goes from a 4.9 to a 4.7 because he feels a little bit better about himself. So our tailback's going to be back in what we call the I formation. A lot of people call it the pistol formation. We do have a pistol formation that's a little bit deeper. It'll be probably around 7 yards. But in the I formation, his toes are going to be at 5.5 for the gun triple, so it hits a little bit faster. But he's going to have a narrow 2-point stance. Your regular tailback stance, hands on top of the thigh boards, but the feet have to be less than shoulder width apart. And what we tell them is that every kid's watch Adrian Peterson run, so that's the stance we're looking for. Very, very narrow 2-point stance. The quarterback, he'll be in a balanced 2-point stance as well, directly behind the center. Toes will be at 4 yards, and his feet will be underneath his armpits, nice and balanced, ready to receive the football. Okay. Let's get into alignment. Into alignment, we're talking about the offensive line, and I'll get into this with a lot more detail here in a few minutes. It's about smart splits. Basically, what we want to do is we want to widen out the read key for the quarterback, widen him out as much as possible, and put a lot of pressure on him to come down to take dive and clean up the read for the quarterback. The slot backs in our regular normal set will be 1 by 1 off the outside leg of the offensive tackle. Now they'll adjust according to the play, motion, counter motion, and also their own abilities. If they have trouble getting around into pitch path, they may have to cheat a little bit, maybe in and back a little bit in order to get into pitch phase with the quarterback. But normally we'll stay with the 1 by 1. The quarterback's toes will be at 4 yards directly behind the center. So we always talk about toes and not heels. The tailback will be in the I formation, the pistol directly behind the quarterback, and he'll be at 5.5. Okay. I purposely not put the wide receivers in here. They have their split rules, their normal split rules that we get into, and without trying to make the presentation any longer than it needs to be, or the time that I'm allotted here. The wide receivers, basically, they have a split rule. If the ball's in the middle of the field, they'll basically be at the bottom of the numbers in our normal scenario, in our normal set. If the ball's on a hash, the near wide receiver or the boundary wide receiver, he'll split the difference between the numbers and the sideline. The field wide receiver will split the numbers between the hash and the hash and the numbers. If we get into a trip set, we'll take those basic rules and we'll just bump them out, where the field wide receiver will be he'll be on top of the numbers. Number 3 will be at a 5-yard rule, and number 2 will basically split the difference between 1 and 3. So he would, without getting into too much detail, too much minutia about that, that's where we'll be. If we are in a tight end set, if we do have a tight end set, the slot will align outside of the tight end. So if we get into a heavy set, an unbalanced set, he will align outside the tight end, and that's really just a preference of mine to have him be the outside receiver, maybe more of a passing threat, more of a speed threat, definitely, than our tight end. So obviously for spread option guys, you guys are used to still having them 1 by 1 off that tackle. we'll put him outside the tight end, and he's just got to get where he has to get. So, that's again, that's just a preference of mine. All right. Talk about these are gun trouble. These are our basic alignments here. If you take a look, this is just an even defense right here. 4-3, and you can take a look. You got your quarterback. His toes are at 4 yards. Toes of the tailback. He's at 5.5, and then we've got our slots one by one off the outside leg of the tackle. And again, just like I said before, they'll adjust their split as they need to. If they're coming in motion, counter motion, okay, or if they're running the play to their side, if we have an option key that winds up coming up tight to the line of scrimmage. So we have the ability to adjust. Now, what's the advantage of the offensive line being in a 2-point stance? Our advantage of being in a 2-point stance is that we can adjust. We can adjust our splits. We can move our splits right up until when the ball is snapped. So if we have a line that's stemming, we can move with the stem right up until the point that 1 second before the ball gets snapped. We need to be set. The other thing about the 2-point stance that allows the offensive line to see the linebackers, to see where those linebackers are, not only for run but also for pass, to know who we're coming off for and when we should be coming off for him. So want to go over that. I've tried it both ways. I've tried with a 3-point stance. I've tried it with a 2-point stance. I think you can do it with a 3-point stance, but you need to practice certain scenarios that would preclude you from doing it. One of the things with a 3-point stance, you can't necessarily use smart splits just because of blitz possibilities and different calls as far as that's concerned, without getting too much detail about that. But I believe you can do it if maybe you're getting more of a vanilla defense. If you're getting a defense that likes to move and stem and change their alignments up, definitely I'm a big fan of the 2-point stance and have used that for years. So that's a big thing I like to do. Assignments, offensive line. This play, this gun triple, this is all about seams and double teams. Seams and double teams. We want to try to create as many double teams as possible on the line of scrimmage, and it's not a zone blocking scheme. We're trying to get vertical push. So in your zone read, you're trying to get some lateral movement. You're trying to get some lateral displacement along the line of scrimmage. Stretch the defense and then pierce, and that is certainly a very good complement to what we like to do with the gun triple, and it's a part of our offense. However, the gun triple is all about vertical push. So on our double teams, our minimum assignment is to try to get 3 yards of push. 3 yards of push. We want to block that first level, which is that defensive line level. Block that first level before we come off for a second level linebacker. So again, we want to try to create as many double teams as possible. This is a gap and a track scheme. The gap scheme is what we call a backside gap scheme. A backside gap scheme. So your play side tackle would be responsible for his backside B gap. The play side guard for backside A. The center for his backside A. Backside guard for his backside B. So and the backside tackle, backside C. So it's a backside gap scheme. So if there's something in the gap there, you're going to block it. Okay? You're going to block whatever's in that gap. If nothing's in that gap, then you're going to stay on track. If something was in the gap and it stemmed, if it moved away from you, you're just going to stay on track and block your next level. Just stay on track and block your next level. So it's a gap and track scheme. Talk about the double team for a second here. We want to get hip to hip and shoulder to shoulder on our double teams, and this is crucial. And this takes the most time to work with and to teach the offensive line. It's getting hip to hip and shoulder to shoulder, taking our steps, matching our steps. The timing, the tempo of those steps needs to be exactly the same. The time that we're making contact with the defensive line. Again, it's a simple play, but the devil's in the details. You got to work the details every single day. We work shoots and boards and double teams every single day with the offensive line probably to a point where they're bleeding out their ears that they're doing it so many times. But you have to get hip to hip and shoulder to shoulder, because the number one thing that we face when someone wants to defeat a double team is that they want to split the double team. So what we have to do is we have to prevent that from happening. We want that defensive line to try to pick a side. So we need to get hip to hip and shoulder to shoulder. And this is what we call our crease technique. We got 4 hands on the down lineman and 4 eyes on the linebacker. This is a little bit of a change up to our rip and post, which is 3 hands on the down lineman and still 4 hands on the linebacker. But the crease technique is something that we use here at Ferrum, where we get 4 hands on the down lineman. We'll get the near hand down the sternum, the inside hand to the shoulder pad strap. The outside man, who is normally the post man, he's coming down with his near hand down the sternum and his outside hand through the shoulder pad strap. So we're getting 4 hands on the down lineman, and then we're getting 4 eyes on the linebacker. Whichever way the linebacker goes, that's who comes off for him. So however that stack unfolds, however the stack unshakes, that's who winds up taking him. So again, that's what takes a lot of time. The double team, anyone can block singles, and if teams line up that way against us, then great. There's very little communication that needs to be done with our offensive line. But we need to work the double teams every single day.